Project that we're going to be creating in this lesson is going to be using a spreadsheet as a source for the data, populating a Google Doc that's going to be used as a template, creating a PDF that's going to be saved to the drive, and then also emailing that out to the user. If we add in another user, we press the email out and send email. It'll run the script in the background using the data from the spreadsheet. It's going to populate and create a brand new doc from the template, which will look like this. So there's the name Mike Smith, there's Mike and 5. So it's populated the data from the spreadsheet into the Google Doc template and then sent that as an email with the PDF as an attachment, and also updated and customized the email that was sent out. And that's all coming up in this lesson. Log into your Google account, go over to your Google Drive, and we're going to start by creating a brand new spreadsheet. So there's a new button on the left-hand side, select the new button, and from the new button, go down to Google Sheets, and this will open up a brand new Google Sheet. Let's give the Google Sheet a name. I'm going to give it a name of just the data tester, and this is going to be where we're going to have the source content for creating the PDFs. And we're also going to need to create a Google Doc. So go back into the drive, select new, and under the Google Docs, we're going to create a brand new Google Doc. The Google Doc is going to be used for the template. So give it a name, and I'm going to call it template tester. And we're going to populate the information within the Google Doc using the data from the Google spreadsheet. So give the columns some headings. I'm going to have one called ID, the second one called first, the third one called last, so the first name, last name, and email. So these are the fields that we're going to be tracking and updating within the spreadsheet. And then we're going to be adding a fifth column, and the fifth column is going to be where we're going to track that the emails have been sent. So the PDFs have been created and the emails have been sent. Also within the drive, we're going to create a brand new folder, and this is where we're going to store the PDFs as we're creating them. So I'm just calling this tester, and you can give it whatever name you want. I'm going to select the template that we created and the sheet that we created, select both of them, drag them into the tester folder so that everything is sitting within the one folder. Within the tester folder, create another brand new folder, and we're going to call this PDFs. So this is where the created and the generated PDFs are going to go so that we can separate our template and our data from the actual PDFs that get created using the Google Apps script. Let's set up the template. So go into and open up the Google Doc. So this is where you can add in a company logo, and this is all what's going to be going into the PDF that we're going to be creating. So you can also give your company name and any other graphics or images that you want, and then set up the template. So you can add in various fields that you want populated. So in this case, I'm going to be populating the first and the last name. So what I'm going to do is, in order to distinguish it from the rest of the content, I'm going to add curly brackets, and I'm going to uppercase the fields that I want to update and populate. And then these fields are going to be matching the field names here within the heading of the spreadsheet. And we're going to do a replace within the app script code in order to replace the fields with the correct data. So create the document, and then you can add in some additional content into the document. So here I'm just typing in congratulations. I'm going to use the first value field here in addition to the ID field. So that's going to just get the data coming from the spreadsheet, and then I've just added in a signature there. So we're going to be generating these from the template, from the Google Doc template, as PDFs using the Google Apps script. Next, open up the Google Sheet, and we need to populate some data into the sheet. So give them some IDs. There's first names, last names, and then the email addresses. When you're using Google Gmail, you can also add and append to your email address by using the +1. So this is just my testing Gmail account. So I'm going to be sending the emails as they get generated to these accounts. We're going to also be using a bound script, as we're going to be adding a UI menu into the Google Sheet for easy way to send the emails. So anyone can open up the sheet and they'll be able to send that. So we'll be doing that at the conclusion of this lesson. So under the extensions tab, select Google Apps script, and this is going to open up the script editor. Give the project a name. I'm going to call it tester PDF, just give that the name. I'm also going to make this bigger, so at any point you can open up by right-clicking within the editor area, the command palette. Now I'm just increasing the font size. Of course, you don't have to do this, but this is just so that the code is a lot more readable within the editor. So I'm going to do it one more time. All I'm doing is opening up the command palette and selecting one of the commands, and one of the commands in the editor is to increase the font size. So once you've created and once you've accessed the editor, we're going to create a function and update the function name. I'm just going to call it sender. And from here, we're going to need some values. So what we want to do is we want to select the spreadsheet, and we're going to select the sheet contents so that we can iterate through the sheet contents and go through them line by line, row by row, in order to send and generate the documents from the template. So we're going to use the spreadsheet app service and then open by ID. Now you can also open the active sheet as well, or you could open it by ID. Both are able to open up the same sheet document. As eventually we're going to be adding this within the UI menu, but if you don't have it within a bound script, if you're doing it within a standalone script, then you need to use the ID in order to identify the spreadsheet. I'm going to set up the sheet ID as a global value. So that's just the sheet ID that I've got from the web URL. And I uppercase usually the global values. So this is just a variable that we can then use in order to open up the selected sheet. And we also want to get just the first sheet. So rename the first sheet to data. And in order to get the sheet object, we're going to get sheet by name. And we know the name that we've just set to data. So this is expecting a string value to be set as the sheet name. Let's get the data from the spreadsheet, and we're going to create another variable. We'll just call this one data. So now that we've got the sheet object, and using the get data range will allow us to select all of the cells within the spreadsheet within that range that have data. So it's going to select all of the values that are currently basically the ones that are highlighted here, going to the last column and the last row with any data within that range. And then we want to get this data as values. So we're going to be using the method getValues, which is going to return the data from the spreadsheet into an array-like format. And we're going to output that data within the logger log. Let's run the sender. We're going to also have to accept permissions for the application in order to run the script and access the data from the spreadsheet. Select the Google account that you want to authorize to run the script. Then go down to the bottom where it says go to the tester PDF, which is the name of the Google Apps script that we're using. These are the permissions that we're currently permitting. And then just select allow, which will allow the spreadsheet in order to access the content using the Google Apps script. So here we've got the data that's sitting within the spreadsheet. We also want to get the data, and we only want to get and use the data within the rows, as we know that the first row is going to be the heading data. So we don't need that, and we just want to return back the rows. So using a data slice one will slice out only the rows of content that we want to iterate through. We also want to then create a loop with the rows data. So we can get rid of the logger right now because everything is working. So using the for each method, we're going to loop through and get each row of data, and we're also going to pull back the index value of those rows. So the for each is an iterator which allows us to loop through an array of data, and that's what we have for the spreadsheet. So this is going to return back each row of content. And if you want to see the contents of each row, you can use the logger once again. So run through, and it returns back each row. And these are going to be, the columns are going to be accessible using their index values in order to return back the data that's sitting within the column. Next, let's select the doc. And this is the doc that we're using as the template. So we're going to give it a global value for its ID, go over and open up the doc, and then within the web URL, that's the easiest way to select the ID of the file. And each file will have a unique ID. So this allows us to select the document and select the document using its ID. So what we want to do is we want to set up the template, and using the const, this is the document template that we want to use. Using the drive app, we're going to get file by ID, and this is where we would use the document ID in order to identify the file that we want to use. And because we're going to be updating the file, what we want to do is we want to actually make a copy of the file, and we're going to be updating that duplicated file and not working off of the template. So that's going to leave the template intact and allow us to duplicate the file. So let's go ahead and we're going to make a copy of the file. So we've got the file object as temp. And we also want to place it within the PDFs folder. So this is our working folder that we're going to be working out of. So go ahead and grab that ID of the folder ID. And anytime you want to place your documents in a particular folder, you need to have the ID of that folder in order to place the documents. Otherwise, it will just be placed within the root directory. So next, we're going to select the folder. And this is going to be the folder where the files are going to go into. This is also using the Drive app service. And then we're getting the folder by ID. And this is where we would add in the folder ID that we just selected so that we can identify the location of where we want to copy the new file into. And we want to make multiple copies of the file. So for each row, we've got new data that we want to add into the file. So this is where we can use a make copy. So we're selecting the template file and using a method called make copy. And where we're placing it within the folder object. So what this will do is this will make a copy of the template file and place it within the folder. So we can run the sender now. We're going to have to accept permissions once again, because now we've added in new permissions, whereas we're using the Drive app service. There's the permissions that we've added. And as we let the script run through, what it's doing is it's going through and it's making a copy of each one of the documents. So this is a copy of the template. It's not the original template. And it's running through and doing 4 copies of it. But because the name is going to be the same, we're going to have just the copy of template tester because we haven't specified a name. So there's our 4 copies. They're all going to be exact copies of the template. So we can remove those for now. And that was just to show that we are creating a file on each iteration. So what we want to do is we want to select the file as a document and then update and edit the document body. So using the document app service and then open by ID. And we have the file and we can get the ID of the file by using the get ID method. So that's going to allow us to open up the document object. And then in order to edit the content, we need to select the body of the document. So we can use the get body method in order to select the body of the document. And what we want to do is we want to replace some of the contents that are contained within the body. Now, in order to do this, we have to loop through each one of the heading values so that we can populate and do a replace of that data. So for now, let's do one where we're going to take the body object and then using the replace text method, we need to identify the value that we want to replace. So the string value that we want to replace. So right now we're just going to replace first. And that's going to be the string that we want to replace, that it's going to be checking for and looking for. And then the value that we want to replace it with. And we can get the name values And these are going to be located within the row as under the first row there. So within the row, using the index value of 1, we can replace the text of each one of the bodies. So let's go ahead and run the function. And we need to once again accept permissions, because right now we're going to be using the document app service. So we've got new permissions for the script in order to be able to run properly. So we're creating a bunch of documents that are going to be using the template, but this time we're going to be populating the data, and we're doing a replace of the word first. So it's being replaced as we're opening it up. There's the values that are being replaced. And this is once again coming from the template. So now it's created 4 new documents, but it's replaced the first word name. So we want to also make this a little bit more dynamic, and we already have the values that we want to replace within the heading of the sheet. So let's update this to make this more dynamic. Let's go ahead and we're going to populate the content of the document with the sheet data. And we have the information contained within the data using index value of 0. So that's going to provide the first row of content from the spreadsheet. So data 0 is an array of the first items in the sheet. And we're going to loop through each one of those. And that's going to return back the heading value. And I'm going to also capture the index using the value of I. So again, we're iterating through all of the headings, and that will be ID, first, last, email, and sent. And we're going to make some updates to them. So first we're going to take the value, and this is going to be the header information. So we're going to be updating the heading, and using the JavaScript method of toUppercase will allow us to transform the content of the heading to be uppercase. And then that way we can use it within the body replace in order to replace the content. So here we've got hard-coded the word first. So let's update this, and I'm going to be using the backticks. So those are the template literals. And what we're going to be doing is replacing the value that's contained within the curly brackets. So we've got the curly brackets within the string, and then we want to replace it using the header 1 value. So the header 1 value is that value that's coming from here. You can also do that within one statement. If you're to do the heading and then toUppercase, you can also do that within one statement as well. So what this will do now is this is going to loop through and it's going to update the heading. Let's also set some unique names for the document. So taking the document and set the name. And this is just expecting a string value for whatever we want to set the name to. And I'm just going to use the value of row 0, so that will be the ID. And then the value of row 1 as the name of the document. So that will rename the documents. And save that. And go over to the PDFs area. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove all of those. And run the code. And we're going to see what that looks like. So now it's giving us names that are coming from the sheet. And it's renamed all of the document copies that we've made. Let's check to see if we've had updates. So it looks like there's what it's doing is it's still adding all the values as row 1. So we want to try to get around that where instead of the row 1, we can use the row with its index value as we're looping through, and we're going to get the index value. So that was the update there. So now it will populate the data properly and dynamically, and that's going to be once again coming from the spreadsheet data. To get the document as a blob, that will allow us to then use that and email out the document as a PDF. So using the doc object, select the getAs method, and within the method we're going to select it and get the meme type as PDF. So this will return back a blob formatted PDF version of the document. So once we're done with the document, we can then close the document, And the reason that we're using the save and close method will allow us to finalize the replace of the text, and then we can select the document and use the document with its updated version. So what we want to do is we want to send this out as an email. So select the email address, and the email address that it's going to is going to be contained within the fourth column. So that's going to have an index value of 3. So using the value from row 3, we'll get the email. And then you can create the rest of the content for the subject and also customize that. So what I'll do is for the subject, we'll just use the values of the row 0 and row 1, and then I'll add to it new file created. And that's actually just going to send the PDF version of the file. And then within the body, the message body, we can have a greeting. So I'm just using the backticks there. And we can say hi, and then using the value from the spreadsheet. Once again, we're going to use the value from the row with the index value of 0. Welcome, we've created. And now using the mail app service, send the email to the user. And the send mail can take an object formatted structure. So first we need to do the to email, and then the subject. And this is just going to take the subject value that we just created using the variable. And then it's got an HTML body. So this can also be HTML code within the message body value. And these are all just coming from the values that we have up here. So the message body. And then to set the blob as an attachment. So we're attaching it as within the attachments. And this is expecting an array format, so you can have multiple attachments. And here's where we can select and send the blob. And we're just going to use the blob object. And then the same that we did over here where we get meme type PDF, get as meme type PDF, which will create a dynamic PDF of the blob, and it's going to send it to the email address. And that's the email there, so I don't have anything yet in the inbox. We need to accept the permissions as we've added in the mail permissions. And now it's going to run through and it's going to send an email to each one of those values that we have within the Google Sheet. And there's the first email that came through, dynamically created the PDF and populated the PDF information and sent it to us. So notice we're still making them as docs. So what we want to do, if we want to save the PDFs that we're constructing, that we're creating dynamically, we can create the PDF object from the blob object, and then we can just save that within the folder as well. So here is where if you want to add in the PDF, and if you want to do something with the PDF, or you can not use the setting as a variable and just use the folder, and this is the folder that we're dropping it into. So what we want to do is we want to create a file from the blob, and we can set a name of the file. And because this file is going to be a PDF, so we'll set it as extension PDF, and we can use the same string values here for the name of the PDF. So what this will do is this is going to create a PDF, and I'm going to be then removing out the files that we're creating. So once we're done with the file object, what we can do is we can do a file and set trashed to be true for the file. And let's move this in. So where we're setting the file, when we're making a copy, we can also then clear out and remove the file after we've finished with it. So that will move the docs, and we're actually only going to be creating the PDFs from that line of code. So let's run through it again. And now it's going to be creating PDFs and also emailing out the PDFs, and then also removing out the docs as they get created. So there's the new round coming through, the updated PDFs, and then we're also storing the PDFs into the drive, and these are the populated ones that we have. And this is all with the data coming from the spreadsheet. So if you want to store them as PDFs, you can keep them as PDFs using the file, or you can also just send them just as emails so you don't have to store them into your drive, so then you don't need this line here, or you could set the PDF and set that to trashed, and that will also remove out the PDFs from the folder, but it will just still create them. And once we refresh that, that last one there is gone. Let's update the sent column, and that way we know that the data has been sent. And we can also put a condition to check to see if the sent column has a value, and if it doesn't have a value, then we know we can send the file. And if it's already been sent, then we're not going to send it again, because we're going to be adding the UI button for the user to be able to click it. So we don't want to keep sending it if the data and if the message has already been sent. So let's add in another statement here where we're going to be using a variable, let's call it tempo. And from the sheet, we need to get the range there where we want to select the value. And we do have the row values. As we're iterating through, we've got an index value that we can then use to indicate what the row is. And because the index value is going to be 0 based, but the rows start at 1, and we actually want to select the row starting at row number 2, we do the index and then add 2 to it. And then we want to select the column that we want to update. So the column is going to have an index value or row and column value of 5. And we just want to update 1 row and 1 column value. So that's going to select the cell immediately to the left of the email, which is going to be going under the sent column. And then we can set the tempo object and set a value once we have the range, and we'll just put whatever the current date is. So that will populate that information. And then we just need to add in a condition that's going to check to see if the value in the row with a value of 4 has a value or not. And if it doesn't have a value, then we can continue to make it. If it does have a value, then we want to skip over making the document for this value. So let's add in the condition as we're iterating through that we've got row with the index value of 4, and we want to make sure that it's blank. And if it is, then that means that we can run through this creation and create all of the files. Otherwise, we're just going to simply skip it. So I'm going to just paste that in. And now if there's a value within the sent, it should skip those ones when we run the function. So we should only be sending to those 2 emails. Let me clear out the PDFs once again and run the function. And we can also go in the emails. So it's only going to be populating to those 2. So it's already picked up the second one there. And it should populate the date into the row. So it populated the current date into the row, and then it skipped over the other ones because they've already been sent. So now it's only just created the 2 where we've got Jack and New as the first names, and then also only sent out to those 2. So that allows us to run the function multiple times, and if there's a value within the sent, it's not going to try to send out another email. Once we have the function working as we expect, and it's working properly, then we can add the last step where we're going to be adding the function to the sheet UI so that anyone can send emails using this Google Apps script. So we're selecting the spreadsheet app and then using the get UI method. And this is going to return back the UI object. And this is only available within the bound script, so it's not going to be available within a standalone script, as it won't be able to select the active item. And we want to create a menu object. So this is going to be the label on the menu. I'm just going to call it email out. And then the tab in the menu, we can add a bunch of tabs, and we can set that using the add item. And this will just say send email, and you can customize this as needed. And then it also requires a string value of the function, and we named the function sender, so that has to correspond to sender. So these have to be the same, and this is also expecting a string value of the function name. And then lastly, we add to the UI, so that will add that item into the menu item. So whenever anyone opens the spreadsheet, it's going to run this trigger, and it's going to allow us to run the function that we've just written within the Google Apps script without having to open up the script and using the script editor in order to run it. So this is a much more seamless process that can be applied for other users. And in order to trigger the onOpen, we can run the onOpen function, so that will simulate the onOpen, adding the item to the menu, or we could refresh the spreadsheet within the browser, and that's going to actually close the Google script, where we could always open it under the extensions apps script. And now we've got the function for email out. So let's remove the value of sent from the column E. So now that one's just got a blank value. So we should be able to just send the value to that particular row of data by pressing the email out and send emails. It's going to be running the script in the background. And then once it completes running the script, it should have that updated value. It's got the PDF that was created within the folder. And then also it sent out the email with the data from the user and sent that out as an email. So that completes and concludes this Google Apps Script project, where we are able to use a doc as a template that we populate data from the spreadsheet and create a PDF from that data and the template. And we also send that as an email and then update the spreadsheet that email has been sent.